where impact starts with passion. I'm your host, Shivani Gupta. Each week, we will delve into transformational stories and strategies from the brightest minds that have done transformational things both in business and in their personal lives. Through a number of principles that I'll share, whether you're a seasoned leader or starting your journey, what we'll do is uncover insights to help you lead with more passion and purpose in what you do. Hi, everybody, and I wish I could just let out a bunch of balloons for our 200th episode. It has been such an insightful thing to be able to talk to guests or share some of my expertise now over almost 4 years of being able to do the podcast. And with this particular podcast, I wondered what was the best way to share either what we've had the most amount of feedback on particular episodes or what really resonated with people, that they send us little bits of information or things that people shared. And one of the things I wanted to do was to commemorate that and to share probably the top standout insights and lessons learned. And so what I want to do is dive into what those lessons were, and I guess 3 key lessons that came out of our top episodes in the last 199 episodes. And so the first one was really, to set this up is really about the transforming life's lessons to passion. And, our podcast is called the Passion Institute podcast. We want to make sure that when we're doing it, that authenticity, when we speak to people, when we talk about certain topics, is authentic. It's about sharing it's about sharing unfiltered experiences with you that build trust and emotional resonance. We also wanted to make sure and talk about the fact that your story is so powerful. Everybody that we speak to, every topic we try and cover, we want to make sure that people talk about one of the common questions we've asked from episode 1 to 199 is that what's been the highlights and the lowlights of your life? What are your life's toughest moments that have challenged you? And often they become the greatest messages when it's framed with the word passion. And also the fact that we're in 200 episodes, I just wanted to give a shout out to this beautiful woman who is no longer with us. She was, in fact, the first guest on this particular podcast, Jill Emberson, who encouraged me to do this podcast, even when I couldn't understand why I should be doing this particular podcast, because she said that the work that I was doing would help build more deep impact and connection. Thank you so much, Jill. So let's talk about the first guest that had such an influence, not only on me, but a lot of our listeners. Now, you may have come across the book Ikigai, which is a worldwide phenomenon. It is co-written and co-authored by Hector Garcia. And Hector was on this podcast, and he talked about discovering your Ikigai. He talked about that you've got to clarify the intersection that you have of what you love, what you're good at, but also what the world needs and what you can be paid for. And when you find that intersection, you find your Ikigai. He also, asked us to share our learnings through writing and giving it form, giving it ideas. I know in the conversation I had with Hector before and also after hitting record, I learned so many things from him. And he also talked about that the simplicity is power, that the longevity of your message lies in its clarity and its emotional resonance, not just always the complex. I want to talk about a recent guest that we had, Dr. Mark Van Ryan, and he talked about leading with the purpose of Age of AI. Every conference I'm going to, AI speakers, AI conversations are getting more and more, and that is going to continue. It's not something obviously we can ignore. And Mark spoke about balancing tech with humanity, that as AI evolves, leaders have also got to make sure that they have empathy and ethics, and they've got those human values that stay at the core as it balances that with AI. He also spoke about be curious and not cautious. He talked about embracing change with curiosity, because that's what leads to innovation, not fear at all. And we've got to embrace that part of it. And the other part that really, really resonated with me, he talked about digital literacy as leadership, understanding that tech trends empower people to lead what is happening in the world. The next person I want to talk about is Christy Byrne, who talked about cultivating curiosity for lifelong learning. She said that, curiosity actually drives creativity. It's being able to ask questions that unlock new ideas, that uncover the paths. That is really important. And she talked about the opposite of celebrating success. She talked about that celebrating failure is feedback, that mistakes are not endpoints, they're powerful learning springboards, and that soft skills are the superpowers. Our emotional intelligence and adaptability are going to be huge with AI in the future as well. I shared a particular episode that really resonated with a lot of people, which was about how to manage toxicity in the workplace. And this got a huge response. And again, I just want to capture the essence of what was some of the things that we covered. One of the things that I covered in there was talking about that you've got to identify the people that are your energy drainers. You've got to recognize the behaviors that undermine morale and productivity pretty early on. And we want to do something about it. We want to take some action on that as well. That courageous conversations matter. We've got to address the issues that we go into with compassion, but at the same time, we've got to be direct. We've got to manage that healthy culture in what it is that we're trying to create. And that psychological safety unlocks passion. Passion is a word really important to me. And so I talked about the fact that when teams thrive, they do that when they feel safe, when they feel heard, when they'll feel supported. And even when they're challenged in a way that they are done with support and respect. We had Vanessa Bennett, who talked about harnessing neuroscience for sustainable performance. And she talked about the fact that the brain needs balance. We need to understand how stress and recovery work empowers leaders and that avoids burnout. We talked about the fact that performance is linked a lot to mindset. And that sounds very simple, but she talked about how we can understand through patterns, we can shape outcomes, we can rewire them so that we can get better results. And she talked about that well-being drives productivity, not the other way around. She talked about the fact that sustainable success, comes when your wellness is built into your daily habits and your culture. I spent a fair bit about time talking about aligning passion and purpose with your KPIs. And again, this got a lot of response. A lot of listeners came out and asked for more information on that, or said that really enjoyed that particular episode. And I talked about the fact that purpose fuels performance. When people know why they do it, their impact increases. And if you haven't seen, and I talked about this, Simon Sinek's TEDx talk on why, start with why, it is absolutely fantastic, as is his book. In that particular podcast, I also talked about that KPIs are really important to increase focus. Passion is great, but we also want to then link that into measurable goals that drive strategic action. And this is something that I speak to a lot of teams about, and making sure that happens. And that also, that alignment reduces burnout. Rather than being in all different directions, when you align your passion and your metrics, and when you direct your energy, you will not deplete it, but you will build it in terms of what happens. There was another particular episode where I talked about how do we create a culture of feedback. I talked about that feedback as a gift, even though it's not often seen like that. When we get constructive input, when it's given and received, we drive individual and your team to evolve to the next level. And we want to normalize the conversation. How do we not do this feedback once a year or once a quarter? How do we make feedback not routine, not reactive, but we embed it into the culture? So we do it on a daily basis. We do it informally and formally, so it's not a surprise. And how to lead by example, because leaders who seek feedback build trust, and they also have that growth mindset. There's another episode I talked about the Shoshin mindset. In fact, this word Shoshin has become such an important part of who I am. In my recent book, Getting Your People to Step Up, I've got a whole chapter dedicated on the word Shoshin. And it is a theme that's inspired by Japanese philosophy. And it's about always being the beginner, like entering each situation with openness, even if you're an expert at it. And in my book, I shared an example where I went to a particular training for coaching, and I did not have an open mindset, because thinking, okay, I've been doing this for 20 years, what will they teach me? And they talked about the Shoshin mindset. And when I learned about it, I realized how much more I had to learn. It's also about letting go of ego. It's about releasing the assumptions so that you've got new insights and new ways of looking at something. And again, this word curiosity came up, that it's important to be more curious than certain, because growth lies in the questions, not conclusions. Many years ago, I worked with a beautiful teacher called Dr. John Demartini, and he talked about the quality of your questions. Quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions, and I've never, ever forgotten that. And the last episode that I wanted to talk about is Georgie Enthoven, who talked about clarifying your personal mission to make sure that your career feels like it's being fulfilled. And you've got to define what matters most. You've got to have your personal mission. It's got to be your compass for decisions. And she talked about how you've got to align your work with your values. Your fulfillment comes when your job reflects who you are and what you actually believe in, and evolve with intention. Your mission can grow. Check in with it regularly and refine it as you evolve. It's probably a very unfair update from me, because every guest, every topic, every conversation has had such a great impact. I just want to thank you for tuning in. It means the world to me. And it would even mean the world to me even more if you could just subscribe, if you could share it and review this particular podcast. I hope to bring you many more podcasts that are really about helping leaders and entrepreneurs looking at how they can have more passion, lead people with passion, and create a really passionate life. Thank you for tuning in. I am so grateful to you and so grateful for you. Thank you for tuning in to the Passion Institute podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, we would love for you to subscribe and leave a review. It means the world to us. And for more resources, please have a look at askshivani.com as well as passioninstitute.global. Until then, keep leading with passion and keep making a difference in what you are trying to create as leaders and entrepreneurs.